Money never sleeps, pal.
Hey there, this is Pete Townsend from Norio Ventures, and welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by PAT FinTech, the training partner that demystifies fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. We've got Matt McAllister on the show this week, who is the founder and CEO of Mortgage Propeller, a UK-based fintech who believe that the mortgage application process shouldn't take the joy out of buying a home. Matt is an entrepreneur and fintech veteran armed with an MBA, and his 20-year career has spanned financial derivatives, property, online gaming, and retail entertainment. He and I met back in 2017 while working together in another fintech startup, so this interview is our longest to date as it's been brewing for years. With that, let's just tap the bottle and twist the cap on our chat with Matt McAllister on this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps.
Money never sleeps, pal.
Here we go again, recording tonight with Matt McAllister, founder and CEO of Mortgage Propeller, a UK-based fintech taking the paperwork, ping-pong, jargon, and stress out of the mortgage application process. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks very much, Pete. Great to be here.
Awesome to have you here, buddy. It's so awesome to have you here. This has been in the making for 4 years now, since we first met, right?
Yeah. It's not something I would be put my hand up for, but since it's you especially, I'm ready to go.
I remember we were in the Guinness Hop store. That's where the old Guinness Hop store building, that's what it was, that NDRC had been using for their startup programs up until just recently, obviously, because that whole program has moved now to Dogpatch. And what really stood out to me is that I think you were the only one in the room there that was actually looking at me while I talked, and you were listening to me actively and intently. And I just really appreciated that, right? But now it's our turn to listen to what you have to say. I know a lot of your story, but our listeners don't, and I'm really excited about digging in. So let's just get right to it, yeah?
Okay, sounds good.
So just to kick things off, your backstory is just so chock full of nuggets that all point to how much sense it makes for you to be a fintech founder, right? And I talk to folks about you and say what a grafter you are, but just to run through it quickly, to do this for you.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
In my own words, but then I want to kind of get your take on this, right? Is that you had a cup of coffee as a fund accountant, and you said, kind of to hell with it, I'm going to go be a derivatives trader, right? And I didn't know this, but you building out a team and training all of them, which was a pretty big deal. And then the interlude that I did know about with saving the Mint Cafe bar, right? Going to El Salvador to build a house for a family on behalf of the Habitat for Humanity, right? Meeting Barry McCarthy from Assure Hedge in 2016, going on your very wild ride of a fintech COO, very early days, covering everything from ops, money laundering reporting officer, compliance, GDPR, the CRM, AdWords, SEO. And like I said, such a grafter. And I think that's a mindset that never, ever leaves you. Doing the MBA while you're working on all those long hours, getting that new experience, getting the worldview, going to Paddy Power Betfair, right? Getting that real commercial experience in new markets. The big question, Matt, is this. It's obvious for me that you've got all the ingredients, and it's never a recipe set in stone. But how do you really feel about being an entrepreneur, and does it make sense for you?
That's very succinctly put there, Pete. My little background into a few sentences. But first of all, when somebody says entrepreneur, you think of somebody you see in the movies and stuff like that. Just the phrase, especially in Ireland, particularly in Northern Ireland. And if somebody tries to put themselves out as an entrepreneur, I just think of people I knocked about at school and stuff. You just think idiot. Do you know what I mean? He's calling himself an entrepreneur. Like most of 2020, I was an unemployed entrepreneur, if you want to call it that. Yeah. And please God, that doesn't happen again. But the phrase doesn't sit well. We never used that phrase when we were kids. It was maybe social network made it popular. So, the phrase itself, park that, because I feel like you're not an entrepreneur until you've done something. Do you know what I mean? If you're always trying to duck and dive and try to hustle and make something happen and you haven't achieved it yet and you haven't built a company, it sort of feels like you're cheating. Yes, we're in the middle of, we're trying to build this Mortgage Propeller out. We haven't made it happen yet. We're in the middle of it, and this, it feels like you're cheating being an entrepreneur. So with the phrase, makes me kind of uncomfortable. And maybe if you're in America, you might be comfortable saying you're an entrepreneur. But does it make sense for me? It's the only thing that makes sense for me. And I got real clarity in this a couple of years ago in the MBA. They brought this French guy in, some big guru. Everybody made a big fuss when he came in to talk to us. And, I went to the MBA to try and find what I was going to do. I'd sort of stopped trading. And I'd been working with a sharehead and like, okay, what am I going to be doing for the next 10, 20, 30 years? And he put it like this. And this was once I heard this, it was really clear. And I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to be doing. He said, think of the thing you do, whatever it is that you lose track of time when you're doing it. That's something that you love. Like you get on a flight and you can't even finish what you're doing and you're told to get off the flight, or you're starting to work and you check the clock and it's 3:00 in the morning. And when he said that, I think like there's only two things that ever did that for me. And one was playing video games as a kid. And the second was when I was trying to, come up with an idea or look at a business proposition or looking at maybe a property I should buy to try and, make some money or do something, and I could work and just continue to work for hours and hours. And that's the thing that you're meant to be doing with your life. And so, Mortgage Propeller and entrepreneur, as you call it, it's the only thing I could be doing. Working for someone is not, just doing a normal 9 to 5. It's not me. And I fairly quickly saw that one as a fund accountant. I got a good sense of it when I was in Betfair. A little bit to the extent in AssureHedge, it's not your own thing. It's hard to really go for it. But it was great in there because it was a startup and we were learning so much. You were there with us for a while. And now Mortgage Propeller, it's not work. It's just not work. It's just something that you should be doing. And I suppose if somebody who's maybe thinking, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but if they want to start their own business, if they wasn't something they could do for 30 hours straight without sleeping, then it's not going to be for them and they'll be found out, So it was really the only thing for me. And even, whatever happens with Mortgage Propeller, let's say all goes well, I could imagine twiddling my thumbs at home going, I better do something else here to get stuck in, because it's the thing that makes time go quick for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I know what you mean about the term entrepreneur. When I first started out, after I left the big job behind, I ran into Des Bishop, the comedian, at a coffee shop. What was it called? Sister Sadie's or Brother Hubbard's or something like that. And he said, what are you doing? What are you up to? I didn't know what else to say. I had just started what I was doing and I didn't know what I was yet. I said, I'm an entrepreneur. He's like, well, what do you mean? Like tech? I said, yeah, that sounds good. Right. But it is a weird term, isn't it? And it's like putting a label on yourself and saying, I am one, while you're out there kind of just working for yourself. Then you start building a team, you start bringing in some revenue. Okay, now I'm an entrepreneur. But before that, what was I? Just some randomer?
When we were kids, you ask, what does your daddy do? And, he's a businessman. We didn't know what that businessman was, but he was probably an entrepreneur, and it's not something we can. The only time that it was ever somebody labeled to me, and I went to try and get into the MBA, they make you do an interview, and you're giving it socks because I really wanted to get into this because I had so many things I didn't know, and I needed to learn. I had no network, only with the traders that I've been spending the last 10 or 15 years with, and the guy said to me, why do you need to come on this entrepreneurship, or why do you need to come on the MBA? You're an entrepreneur. And in my head I wanted to go, I'm a broke entrepreneur. I need to get on this here. I'm going to be in trouble in a few years. But he said it so casually. And then during the 2 years of the MBA, I sort of would have been that person. Sometimes I felt like a black sheep. You know what I mean? Everybody had all this experience, whereas I had always, trying to find a way to make money, doing something that didn't have a salary. Like I never really had a paycheck. But you get more comfortable. If all goes well, perhaps I'll, be comfortable saying that, being labeled to that. But it's not something that would come to your mind, especially in Ireland. I think maybe we have to shake that off a little bit, especially if it's going to be, the more tech scene is going to happen, and things are going to be more disruptive here, particularly in Northern Ireland. I think people need to get comfortable with it,
Yeah, it is. And I'm thinking as well, there's a term serial entrepreneur. It's that once you've done it a couple of times, okay, then you whether you refer to yourself as a serial entrepreneur or whatever. But anyway, back to a more humble topic, right? Tell us about Mortgage Propeller. This is your business that you launched last year, started building a team, like I said, started bringing in some money. Out of all the people in the world, why is Matt McAllister doing this?
Why am I doing? The easiest way to start this is tell you how it started.
Yeah.
So, perfect example of, as you say, what an entrepreneur did. I just couldn't believe the house prices could just keep crashing and crashing and crashing. particularly in Northern Ireland. I remember researching it, and it was like the fastest drop in the history of house prices for a country, basically in the history of time. And I just was confused, like how low do house prices go? And I kept looking and nosing around, and I read up about the Great Depression and how prices felt, and it dropped so quick. And I was like, well, it can't be worth nothing. And I seen a house online in an auction, and it was advertised for £30,000. And I mean, I know nothing about property. And I was, well, like, how much does it cost to build a house? And somebody told me it can be like 70, 50, 70, 75,000 pounds. I was like, right, well, how come that's going for 30,000? That doesn't make sense. And they're like, it just is. And so I tried to research as much, and I remember going up looking through the windows of this house that was for auction in Tyrone, where I'm from. And anyway, I couldn't get my head around it anymore. I had to try and buy it, but I didn't have any cash at the time. This was 2010, peak bottom of the house prices, I suppose. So I bought it with a credit card in the auction. And my intention was, look, how much can I really lose here? I had a little bit of a bidding war, not much back then. What I'll do is I'll get a mortgage and I'll pay off this credit card. So got won the auction, bought the house, and I have a house, and I have maxed out my credit cards. And then I go to get a mortgage, and this is when the problem starts. You can't do that. You can't buy a house with a credit card.
Whoa. You put a £30,000 house on a credit card.
£42,000.
Oh my God. And what was your credit limit on the card?
So I had a few cards, so I was juggling and things like that there, and they give you, I thought you knew this here, they give you, like a sign-up bonus. So for whatever reason, back then, I seemed to be able to phone up and go, can I increase my credit limit? And they're like, okay, what would you like to increase it to? I would say, can I increase it to £50,000? There would be a 1,000 limit on it, and they would go, no. But the lady on the other side of the phone, it's not her job to tell you what your credit limit is, and in business side of things, she's like, no, but we can increase it to 10,000. I was like, great. And they would do that. And so I did that in all the credit cards. And this was after the family business in Cafe Bar. So I wasn't exactly flush and hadn't been trading for a while. So I bought them all with a credit card. I felt the house was worth like 70, 80,000 pounds. So I'll get the mortgage, I'll pay off the credit card, and we'll do this again. That was the plan. Yeah. That was the master stroke of genius.
No, Matt, I knew about the house with a credit card. I thought it was just like the deposit, not the whole thing. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, so this is where it starts getting funny. So like, I remember talking to my friend, does anybody know a mortgage broker? And they're like, oh, use this guy, he's great. So left Dublin at the time, up to his house, couldn't find it. He was in his back garden in a shed. Had to climb over the fence. It was about 45 minutes left. Lost the day's trading. I was in that room for 3 hours, and I think he spent about 20 minutes talking about mortgages. And he was like, right, this is how you're going to go about it and everything. And my fee is this and that and the other. And I was like, okay, I'm in safe hands there. Basically, I was never getting a mortgage. And if anybody would have asked a few questions and I would have told them what it was at, I had never qualified. First, I'd maxed out my credit cards. I had destroyed my credit limit. I had fallen off the voting register. I had missed a couple of payments for mobile phones and stuff like that. And I was in real trouble. And if I would have known this in advance, I certainly wouldn't have put it on the credit cards. But I now got myself into a bit of jeopardy here. It's like, oh, okay, when this interest rate starts kicking in these credit cards, I'm in a lot of trouble here. And it took me 2 years to get the mortgage, and it was horrific. But I learned everything. I had to go from that broker. I went direct to lenders. I went to other brokers. I started fixing my credit limit. I borrowed money. I tidied everything up, and I got it remortgaged. And it was the right deal in the property. The research that I had done, the waiting list for people who needed houses to rent and all these sort of things. So, and I did that actually a few more times. But so it was a pretty bad process. And then go back a couple of years later. So 8 years later, 2 years ago, me and my wife go for a mortgage. And it's the exact same process. Now, we were just finishing up in a sure hedge then, or I was just finishing up. And I just couldn't believe it here. How can this be the case? You got Elon Musk and those guys, sending things to the moon, and there's self-driving cars. And yet you're telling me I still have to print out and attach documents and scan documents. And the mortgage that I went to, I had 126 attachments for me to explain my background as a trader and all that sort of stuff, on 9 emails. I went through all 7 lenders in the Republic of Ireland at the time. I went through 3 brokers. I was like, this is just ridiculous. And we ended up losing that property. We didn't get it. Wife was very upset. I was worn out by it. I remember thinking to myself, at some point I'm going to look into this. And I did. And I started to look into, there must be a better way. Mortgages online. Surely there's a way, there's an app for this at some point. And I ended up going down a rabbit hole, and I went to America. There's Rocket Mortgage in America. What's this all about? Oh, they've got it online. And I saw the application process online. It was really clean, really slick. And as soon as you start to do it, especially if you've got experience, you know that this is where it's going to go. You know the application. As soon as you touch it, you go, this is where the mortgage application process is going to go. It's called the fact find. The fact find is going to move online. But of course, we've just been in fintech for the last 18 months at the time. You know, open banking's coming. You know how that's going to make a change. You know that Generation Z and the millennials aren't going to go through this process in due course. And so the intent, my thought was, this is going to go online. So I started looking into it, and that's where Mortgage Propeller starts to happen. And when I'll skip through all the nonsense, but when you really dig into why the process is so bad, is because of compliance. So in the UK, 9 out of 10 mortgage advisory firms have 5 advisors or less. They can't scale. And when you dig into it, they can't scale because of compliance. They have to be compliant, and there's a lot of manual processes and a lot of legacy systems, and they can't generate new business because they work off local referrals and word of mouth, and they've a bricks and mortar business. And so, coming from Betfair, where I was an international commercial manager, I would have looked at I would have managed, say, South America, inbound marketing, digital marketing, and affiliates, which is a big thing. And I was like, if we move this online, the same process for how you should find your revenue and your new business should be online. It should be affiliates. It should be inbound marketing. And if you're online and you've got the engine to do the fact find, the document upload, the things that are coming with open banking, then you can sort of take care of it from end to end. And once it's taken care of from end to end, it's compliant, because there'll be an audit trail, just like how those big corporates like Betfair track where all their business comes from, and they can define to the pipeline what's going to happen for the next 3 months. And that's where I was thinking, that's the way this needs to go. And it took a long time to get there. And I spoke to everybody. I spoke to research with advisors and brokers. Got in front of Paul, the co-founder. Spoke to a guy from my hometown who's a CTO, and I was like, "Is this feasible? Could you do this?" And that's when Paul, who's in the industry, he would describe to me the compliance, and he said, "You don't want to start building your own rocket mortgage." He said that in the UK, everybody is on a network. I'm going, okay, well, what's a network? He said that we learned this, appointed representatives in a sure hedge. Do you remember when we got authorized in the FCA? So somebody can be, unlike in the Republic of Ireland, where somebody's directly authorized, in the UK, you don't have to be directly authorized. You can come under somebody else's umbrella. You can be an appointed representative. And so 70% of everybody who gives out mortgages, every broker in the UK, 75% of them are on somebody else's network. Mm-hmm. And Paul, my co-founder, owns a small network based outside of Belfast. And he says, my problems is all the compliance you just described there. And I was like, well, why don't we do this? And so we started talking, and long story short, we said, okay, we'll go for it. And Brendan, I recruited him and convinced him, look, we'll give this a go. We'll make this happen. He's very risk adverse. And lo and behold, then a pandemic came. And that maybe leads on to the next couple of questions, but that was me going, okay, I'm real trouble here. This is okay. But so Mortgage Propeller, to simplify, it's a platform to make brokers more efficient and their businesses more profitable. And to do that by addressing compliance and addressing lead generation. And where we're at now, we just went live. We're getting a little bit of revenue. We've got brokers on the platform, and it's for them. It's thinking about, when we were building it, we watched what their problems was. We would ask them, what happens when I walk into your office? What do you do? I walk over here and grab this paperwork for compliance. And I was like, well, what happens if this was online and automated for you? Every time you invited someone, would that be okay? Yes. Okay, let's make a note. We have to do that. And that's how we got to where we're at now.
I gotcha. And the thing is, if you take a look at the Mortgage Propeller website, right, it looks and feels like something for customers, right? And yes, that these things about automated compliance, applying the same type of pipeline creation tools and tracking where everybody's coming from, tracking probably the demographics and where more may come from down the road, all those types of things you did with Betfair, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so that's the one problem you're addressing with people. Like, they can't, because the compliance is so hard, they hire staff, right? So there's one admin assistant for every 2.5 advisors in the UK, just to help them get through all of that. And so you think about, you're trying to start your own little business, you're trying to get going, and you've got some customers. Maybe you left a bank and you became a broker, and you don't want to start from yourself, so you join a network, and all that's fine. And you're starting to get a little bit more business, but you can't go and hire somebody and pay a salary, because you don't know if that business is going to be there in 2 months or 4 months or 6 months. However, when you do it with e-commerce, the way the likes of Betfair was, like, you could predict out about 6 to 9 months what your revenue is going to be,
Yeah.
because of the traffic and what you're going to spend would be, and then your cost of acquisition. When I were challenging, we can see our competitors are the large fintechs that are authorized and the large networks that are just archaic. We can talk about that in a second. But when I would ask Paul, I was like, okay, but surely they all have worked out, how much traffic's coming to the site, and they're like, no, that's the moon to these guys. They didn't need. And I was like, well, why don't they do what we're trying to do? And he says, you don't understand. They've already got a virtual network that's very successful. They don't pay for anybody's bricks and mortar. It's up to the guy to perform. It's almost like a hairdresser's. They have a big hairdressers, and everybody pays for a seat, and they take a cut of all the business that comes through.
Yeah.
But they don't, why choose one hairdresser's over another? They don't do anything for it. And that's the part that I mistake. And imagine which hairdressers would you like to work in? The one that's going to have, 2,000 people coming through the doors every week. So you know that you've got a certain amount of revenue for the future, so you're safeguarded there, or the person that has just always been there, that you don't know what's going to lie, and we have a long way to go to be able to confirm that, but that's what we believe we can do. And because it's online, the compliance is taken care of. It's hard to lie when somebody first made contact you, when there's an audit trail from where he first entered the site, what pages he viewed, and then what broker he ended up getting connected with. You can hardly lie and say he didn't do that. You can see it right there when he visited,
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I mean, Matt, you and I have talked about the product before, and I missed something in the course of those first few conversations now I get it. And it is absolutely brilliant. And just to answer that question, which hairdresser would I want to work for? I'd want to work for the one where I don't have to give those goofy head massages. Now I thoroughly enjoy the head massages. And
everybody enjoys the head massages.
And the oil that they squirt out your head and rub in there, which is nice. Minty smelling leaves you fresh on the way out, right? But
you walk out and you can hear the music playing in your ears as you do a little dance down the street,
Oh,
especially when you've been locked down for 4 months.
I know. I can't wait to get the next haircut. But tell me, listen, speaking of, having to wait to get a haircut, because obviously we are where we are right now in the world, and with COVID, you started Mortgage Propeller at the worst possible time in recent history to launch a business. Obviously it takes a lot of guts. Tell us how that all went.
Guts wouldn't be the word I'd be using now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, cojones.
No, I wouldn't be using that either. I'd be like, I'll tell you, there was a night I was, because I knew you'd think about asking these questions. There was a night, the kids got a little stock portfolio, the kids, and I check on it every now and again. And he was doing quite well for a little bit, and I checked on it one day, and it was down 25%. I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on there. Like, oh, it's this is fluctuations. I went down the next day to check it, and it was down another 20%. I was like, oh, I better have a look at this. This was like late February, and the kid had a load of Ryanair shares, and he was losing his shirt. And I was like, I better have a read to see what this pandemic thing's all about, because you're so engrossed trying to make a business happen. And when I read about it, I didn't sleep for the night. I read everything. I read what happened in 1918, and how it travels, and then what service impact. And I was like, oh, I'm screwed here. We haven't got this off the ground. I've quit my job. Nobody's going to be buying houses because nobody's going to be viewing houses. Mortgage brokers are screwed too. Oh, I remember thinking really clearly that night, thinking you've really done it this time. You're first of all, you're not the most employable person. That's clear, really clear in my mind that I have really done it this time. I said to the missus, I'll go sleep in the spare bed, and I don't do a bit of reading. and I remember just going, okay. And I tell you what, there will be, I'm no doubt some people who are listening to this podcast might be investors. They probably got an email from me in the next 3 days after that, seeking investment with no product team or anything, because I was like, once this kicks in and once it arrives here on us, we are really, everything's going to shut down. Everybody's going to hold their money, and there's going to be a big pullback. And that's what happened. So we never really got going. I had an idea of, I want to work for myself. I want to make something happen. And it never really happened. And it stayed that way. It was about 2 weeks later, lockdown happened. That's me being an unemployed entrepreneur, and I'm minding the kids. So I mind the kids because my wife's working. I mind the kids till 6 o'clock. She comes down the stairs. I go up the stairs and I start trying to make mortgage Propeller happen because I had no choice, Pete.
Wow.
I was just thinking to myself, okay, you're not very employable. Nobody's going to be hiring. This is going to be here for at least a year, maybe longer. The best years of your career are gone. You're really screwed here. You've really done it this time. You're not going to dig yourself out because when I would often be thinking, I told my wife before we got married, I was like, you got to understand, I'm not sort of normal. I'm going to be trading and things can go wrong, and you have to sign up for this. And here we are. I always felt that I had a safety net, and that was gone at this point. I'm not going to have any earnings for the next couple of years. That's what I had in my head. And so trying to figure a way out of it. Okay, what can I do? What can I do? Well, can I get a job? Can I trade? No, I'm not going back there. Okay, I have no choice. I have to make this work. So I started writing a perspective. I said to Brendan, the CTO, I says, look, let's build a website here. I need to be able to go and pitch with a website. Paul and Brendan and I were, we'd all made an agreement. We're gonna do something here. And it just kept going. It's like, well, we need to get some wireframes put together, and we have to learn. We have to do our research. There's the lady who came up with Away, the luggage firm. She raised like 3 million or 2 million based on research to prove there was a problem there. So we just started doing that, and we got the website. And I started talking to people, and I had to go to friends and family first, and because there was nothing else to happen. I mean, I hit everybody, and just a lot of blank emails bouncing back, and they were right to bounce back. I was clearly the desperation was hanging out of me, but I had to clear that fence. I just had to. I have no choice. I can't catch me toe on the top of this one. There's too much on the line. You have 2 young kids, so I got 20,000 from friends, and I went to one of the guys, and he'd be sort of an angel friend. And I said to him, look, I need some money to get this off the ground. I think if I can go and do more. But I said, I'll tell you what, if I don't raise a chunk of money, I can't remember, I think I said 200,000. If I don't raise that, I'll give you your 10 grand back. It might take you a while for me to get it. And hopefully, but I promise you I'll give it back. And he says, okay. So that was we started. So we had a little bit of friends and family money, and Brendan double jobbed, and we tried to get a site together, and we tried to get some sort of foundations of what was in our head built, the basics of a platform. I just kept making little steps along. I got a grant from Techstart NI in Northern Ireland, and it was quite a significant grant. It was a proof of concept grant for £35,000. And so suddenly we now had a little bit here, but now we're in like June, and the world hasn't ended. Yeah. And the industry had suddenly learned that they're all working from home, and they can do it, and they're very efficient, and they're doing it very well. They don't have any tools, but they didn't need to do it in the office. And so suddenly attitudes started to change. And, when we're talking to Paul, they were saying, brokers are doing really well. Their personal touch, the things that makes them better than the big fintechs, is coming to the fore now. They've got relationships with clients going back years, and they started to be able to sell them the insurance they need in the middle of COVID, switch their mortgages. But he says they don't have the tools. They're finding it difficult to get documents and scan documents and chase people up. And I was like, okay, this is what we were already doing. This is what we are already starting to get built here. And he said, I think it's time for some conversations. So we started talking to some firms across the UK. And by this stage, we had designs in mind. And lo and behold, people were really interested in what we were showing them. We were talking to the problems that they had: compliance, lead generation, speed, and inefficiencies of completing an application process. And slowly but surely, we started to get interest in some soft commitments, and then went back to other people, and just kept grinding and grinding all through summer until we felt that we had enough to go, okay, let's ask people. And I was getting lots of help. I'm pretty sure I was asking you, how do I go about this, or what should I say next? And I was speaking to the solicitors. I was like, how do you close a round of money? What do you do here? How do I make this happen? And then we just said, right, this is the line. This is what we're going to do. And our team on paper would look quite strong, and we got investment. And suddenly, you can breathe again. You got yourself over that fence. You're like, okay, we're going to give this a go and make this happen. And then from there, there's been a lot of good things just progressing slowly, just a little bit at a time. But why did I choose to do it? Looking back, you had no choice. I had no choice. I'm in a lot of trouble if I didn't get this off the ground. And we did get it off the ground, but that's how it came to be. So guts was not the word you would use, just desperation, or you just have to.
Yeah. I've had chats with entrepreneurs before, Matt, where it's been like, yes, we are completely unemployable at this stage. Is just like, forget about it. We're not going to get a job anywhere.
Yeah.
Did you actually come close to applying for anything to say, I've got to do something to get some money in, where it's just like, okay,
Who's going to mind the kids?
yeah,
We're locked down. That's not possible. I have to mind the kids. I know I'm unemployable. I know we're not going to curse in this here, but Kevin Bridges is a comedian. He's got a great sketch about he's got friends who are unemployable and I suppose
yeah.
I am that person. Maybe not so much now, but go back a year and nobody's hiring me, especially at that time.
Yeah,
And
there's this. I hear you. I hear you. Someone asked me the other day. I'm talking to someone who's making some introductions for me for directorships, and he's like, "Pete, we got this other thing going on. Do you want to think about that for a full-time position, or do you prefer to have a portfolio career?" I'm like, "Oh, portfolio career. That sounds
that
nice.
sounds good. What is that?
I think I'll stick with that.
That sounds good. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one before.
Yeah.
So yeah.
This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by PAT FinTech, demystifying fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. PAT FinTech enable financial services professionals to transform their capabilities into the digital age, with dedicated virtual training programs geared towards those that can develop, deliver, and monitor optimally customized user experiences balanced by appropriate governance, control, and oversight. To learn more about PAT FinTech, go to moneyneversleeps.ie/PAT FinTech.
But you were meant to do this, Matt, and I'm kind of feeling that, and just remembering back to those days. Hunting around while we were at a Sure Hedge, figuring things out, and not letting anything go, right? And saying, well, if this is a requirement for the business, we kind of have to figure out how to do it. And if that means I'm going to go off and do an online course at night for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to go do that, right? Figure things out. It's just got to be done. This is how you do things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I just been feeling that the whole time. About one question on the process that kind of going through, like you said, doing this, what my wife calls just a goofy startup word for market research, customer discovery, right? When you're out talking to these brokers in the UK, talking to the brokers up around Belfast, and where you're doing that, hey, what are your pain points type conversation. You're going in there with an idea that you have about a platform that would be useful for them, but you really want to build that out with the most common features and most common problem solving pieces of kit that will enable you to build that product in such a way that it's going to surprise and delight users from the start, right? How do you kind of balance, hey, here's what I am building, or here's what we've built so far, with a bit of a, slideware around that, with truly gathering requirements from your target market? How do you balance that?
Well, first of all, I suppose it helps with the co-founder that is in the industry. So he was able to go, give me a bunch of names. And so that breaks the ice a little bit, that, Paul's so well respected that, he can open the doors to a few. Ironically, the guy whose whose hedge I had to climb over at the very, very start 10 years ago when I bought that house with a credit card, the first guy I went to, he was the first person I went to this time. I said, look, I'm thinking of building this here. We got designs done first based on my opinion. And, I wouldn't mind if we could show you some stuff and you could tell me what you think and what's good. And imagine if there was a wish list. But the first thing I did was do a survey. So we sent them out a survey, and the survey came back with questions, and then could I follow up? So we sort of broken the ice. Everybody can do a survey with a ... So I knew the people that had completed it. I had their names.
Mm-hmm.
And when we had the introduction, it was easy to talk to them. So when that was shown, there's so much pain in the mortgage industry, and I mean so much pain, so much legacy pain, because they're so sick of it. So if you think that you're even hinting at coming up with a solution that will make it a little bit better, they're more than happy to talk to it. Also, you got to take the time that when this was happening, say February, March, April of last year, and business wasn't booming the way it is now for them, so they had a little bit of time. But when you talk to that, and so what we did was, they wanted to bitch and moan. I was there. Give me both barrels, and because I would start with, well, give me your wish list. What would you do? What problem would you solve first? And then so I was like, well, let me show you what we did do. We thought maybe it should look like this. These were just wireframes and drawings, and they were like, yeah, maybe we should do this. So what I did was we went off and we took their feedback, and then we did them again. So we hadn't spent any money. We're just doing this ourselves, and went back to them and went, what about now? Is that the sort of thing you're talking about there? And you're like, oh, that looks really good. And we had our UX guy do them, and they looked impressive. Now they are literally just drawings, but when you're showing them to a guy who's looking on the same system he's been on for 15 years, before the mobile phones were here, before all this stuff that we do take for granted, and you show him this, and he's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Can you? When's that going to be ready? You're like, well, you don't want to tell them that you have no money and there's no this business not. He said that would be amazing. And then they started giving you little nuggets. Is there a way to communicate with the borrower about a document that's not looking correct? Or is there a way, if they don't make the payment that we've asked them to make, that you could send them a little prompt without having to get into the conversation, because they're chasing, that's a big pain point for me. And you're like, okay, that's a note. So the next time we spoke to another broker, we're like, do you have difficulties chasing money on your payment? How does that work? And what he said was, well, I talked to the bookkeeper. And I was like, okay. And what does the bookkeeper do? She looks to see if the money's been transferred. And then what happens? She comes back and tells me, and then I go, well, what do you do? Then I go and chase the borrower. And I was like, well, why is that done online with Stripe with an automated update, and you can see in your phone when they've made payment or something like that? And he's like, we just don't do it that way. And you're like, right, okay, I see. There's all these little nuggets tally up when you speak to enough people, and you don't have to. If you're right on a problem, you shouldn't have to do that much research, because it all starts to go down the same path, and it just aligns. You're like, okay. The same answers are coming up after 15 people. This is the way it is. This is the problems they face, and you have a little bit more confidence to go and do it.
Yeah, you know what this feels like, Matt? This feels like the first time I heard Jason Bates talk about what he did to gather the requirements to build Monzo. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Him going out onto the streets of London and asking people about their banking app. Tell me about your banking app. How does it work for you? Oh, it's fine. I get everything I need out of it. How do you know how much money you have left? It's like, well, I just go into the app and I look at it and see what my balance is. It's like, well, how do you know what you're going to have left at the end of the month if you got bills to pay? It's like, I don't know. I just kind of remember what I'm supposed to be paying and subtract that. He's like, well, that's pretty hard to do, isn't it? Are you right all the time? It's like, no, sometimes I miss stuff, right? So it's that dig, deep, go, right? And go from one conversation to the next and, ask them the same questions. Do you have the same experience? If not, tell me what else it is. This is called jobs to be done. Well, it's not called jobs to be done. There's a framework called jobs to be done that requires you to do this level of digging. And there's a story I could tell you about milkshakes in middle America, McDonald's and highways and bagels and bananas, but I won't get into it.
Okay.
Listen, I get that. And I can see how you'd be pretty good at that. Thinking about some of the earlier lessons in your career, right? Really your life for the most part, that you've drawn on to get the business going. What are some of the things that kind of stand out to you? I know there's something about the snowball perhaps, and maybe something about Bebo.
Oh, the Bebo thing was probably more interesting, for listeners. And before, when you do entrepreneurship in college or anything, they talk about you must talk to the customer. If you're in the NDRC, they would have told you about the accelerators. They tell you must talk to your customer. So when we were running the nightclub and the bar and the restaurant, this was during the credit crunch. So we launched in December 2007. I was a trader at the time, and I thought it was coming up maybe to help, and I ended up being there for nearly 2 years. But we had real difficulties because there was no lending to be done, and the intention was, just like the credit card with the mortgage, was that once the thing was built and up and running, we could refinance. But the banks weren't lending, and they were tightening, and they were putting the pressure. And I think it was maybe 4 months in. And we were doing really great business on a Saturday night. It was an over 21s, and everybody sort of, it was the place to be. And it was that way for quite a long time. But Friday night, nothing really happened. And people were, there was a real difficult time. So nobody was spending money on food, and we weren't hitting our targets. And I remember the bank manager called me, and they were like, he talked around it and he talked around it. You're not really hitting your figures there. Oh, I know that's good, but that's not. Anyway, he just got to the point. He says, we need an extra 15,000 a week to hit your, to be comfortable, because we were in a lot of difficulty at the time. We're like, right, okay, 15,000. Friday night, we have to come up with 15,000. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's only going to be enough for Saturday for our age group. Okay, we need to go to another age group. And there was an institution not too far away where it had been the place to be for kids on a Friday night between the ages of 18 and 21. Okay, we need to take all that business there and put it in here, and I have to do it by next week, or this is all going to go unraveling. So me and the managers, we went over to that institution on the Friday night. Probably didn't look good. The average age of us probably was 40 at the time. So we went in and I said, okay, let's learn what's going on in here. We have to find out. So this is the first, I suppose, is your market research. I didn't think of his name. I just know that I had to get all those people in our place by next week. So what happened was I sat down with a bunch of young girls, and they would have been what was the age was I then? Maybe 27 or something. And I said, look, can you mind if I talk to you? So I bought them all drinks, and I said, where are you from? How did you get here? Well, we all took a bus because like we're in a rural town, so they're coming from about a 25-mile radius. Okay, who runs the bus? Okay, have you heard of Mint Cafe Bar in the next town over? And they were like, yeah, it's meant to be great, but it's not for us. It's the older age group. And I was like, I think I'm going to open it next Friday night. I'm working there and I'm running the place. Would that be something you want to do? And they were like, yeah, it'll be great. And I was like, well, how do I get everybody in there next Friday? She says, that's easy. Just go on to Bebo. And so she gave me her contact details. Like Bebo, I'm sure you remember, it was a little crappy social media.
Yeah, I remember Bebo, yeah.
And it was funny, like thinking back, the guy whoever came up with that never had the wisdom or insight about advertising. So you could just literally search for whoever you wanted. So I searched it for people from the age of 21 in all the local towns and villages, and I created a Mint Cafe Bar Friday night. I can't remember whatever the theme was. Very hashed together. I did this in the next 48 hours, and I invited about 2,000 people, everybody between the age of 18 because they put their age up, and I just invited them to the site and did a few other little things. Got the popular kids, give them guest lists to tell all their friends, and we made a bit of a hoopaloo. So from the Friday before to the next Friday, we had 1,500 people turn up.
Wow!
And they turned up every Friday until I finished. They were turned up for the next 10 years by all accounts. I can only imagine what the owner of the place the next time must have thought, because there was nobody there, and that turned around to be 20,000 night every Friday for the next 10 years, and it was all Bebo. It cost nothing, but I wouldn't have known that had I went over and no opinions. Was desperate again and talked to that girl. Can't even remember her name, and she told me what to do, and that was it. It was done.
Wow! You
pretty powerful.
And that 20,000 a week, I'm sure right now, would be very helpful to the founders of Bebo, right?
Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
They went bankrupt in 2013. So amazing. And I'm sure that this experience of saying, hey, what is it that we need to do to meet this target? That just obviously lives on in you. And can you put that into an analogy to say how you would go on to Bebo now? It doesn't exist anymore, but how are you kind of parlaying that experience into how you're getting Mortgage Propeller going?
So I suppose at this point, so when we're talking about all the things you love to build and all the things you love to do, the only thing that really matters is your sort of key metrics. So if we're going to raise a huge sum of money and pull this off, and like we're in the mortgage space in the UK, nobody goes into that space. It's just too competitive. You need a lot of money. You need influential people, and you see from investors going, it's too crowded. You're not going to pull it off. And their opinion, fair play to them. That's their thought. And so we have to go with the ambition to do it. Okay, so how do you do it? There's all the things we could build, but the only thing really matters is brokers on the platform, and it's borrowers applications getting completed, and we need testimonials to prove that borrowers like it. That's the way they would prefer to do a mortgage application. But brokers with the experience are getting the benefit, and we list them of what they are. Okay, so I suppose it's, while I needed to, that bank manager told me make 15,000 extra a week, just like out of magic. So we don't have that to do, but what we have to do is get brokers on the platform, and we have to do it over the next couple of months, and we have to get as many applications as we have going through. So anything that gets an advisor to come onto the platform, subscribed and using it, and anything that gets a borrower doing it. Nothing else matters, because we will go out of business at some point in 2021 if we do not raise a significant round to really swing at it. Otherwise, we'll be left in some sort of lifestyle business that'll struggle and choke along. So that's the equivalent for us. What is it that will make that happen? What's that metrics? Okay, how many do you think we need? Okay, I think it's the same as the survey questions when I was interviewing brokers. If the answers all align, then we've got good enough. How many do we need? Well, we don't know. But let's say I'm setting a target there of like 100 applications through by middle of March. Maybe after 40 or 45, the feedback from the brokers will be the exact same. This makes my life easier, or I preferred it the way I used to do it. Then you'll have to pivot, or it'll be something like, this just gives me a lot of peace of mind. Okay, peace of mind. Why? What is it? Okay, maybe we need to focus on that. And we need to do that right now as fast and as aggressively as possible so that we can go to the big boys and go, look, this is what they're saying. Can you imagine what we were doing if we actually had some money? We have this amount of data. We have the testimonials. This is the proof. That's where we're at right now. So that's the closest thing that I would say of our target. I never mentioned revenue or anything in there. Revenue is important, but we could have all the revenue we wanted, and it could be hacking, if you know what I mean. It could be a growth hack that doesn't have the proof point that, if you think of the big vision of what you want to do, which is to, take on institutionalized networks and the big fintech competitors, it's not going to be if you manage to get 5,000 MRR or whatever it's going to be. If you do that in the next 4 weeks, what's more important is advisors using the platform and liking it and trying to get product market fit. And we have to do that immediately,
Yeah, absolutely. There's things called leaky revenue, right? Where you don't have product market fit and it comes in and it's nice and then it doesn't stick around.
I find it, because I'm having these sort of little chats at the moment because we're trying to do a top up of the initial funding, and I bring up a slide of the competitor. So one of the competitors spent 27 million this year to make 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see they've raised huge. This is the leading fintech, and they're going to do the same next year because the prize for the industry, because the market's so big, and you can see when they raised their money at the start, they didn't have any revenue, but they obviously proved enough quickly that, can you see what would happen if you brought this all the way forward, and now they're right there, and it's very hard for people to catch them up. Now they're B2C, whereas we're B2B, but there's no denying it. They did that with no revenue.
With the team that it looks like you've built, at least from your website, Matt, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean looks? Do you think I'm putting up pictures of people?
No. Oh, I know it's legit. And what's great is that when you look at everybody on the team, they're all smiling in their picture, which is always nice to see. But you've got the biggest smile on your face, and
it's because I didn't like taking the photograph.
It looks like everyone is standing in front of their house in the picture of themselves on the website.
That is true. Yeah.
Which is great. Looks like, again, you're building a great team there. I've always felt there was a real team building mentality about you, whether you noticed it or not. But is there a way that you're specifically thinking about this? How you kind of lead by example to keep everybody on the team looking out for each other? Or is this just subconscious for you, common sense? It's just the way you go about life.
Absolutely the second one is common sense. I don't get this here. I've stopped listening to reading leader. We had to do it when we went back to in Smurfit there. There was, there's must have been 2 or 3 leadership courses, and they always made us read leadership books. And I don't know. I sometimes like, am I missing something here? Is it not just common sense, the things you should be doing? We did so much of this stuff, and they bring in people to talk. When I would say, this is not common, but see, there's a couple of things different. I never really worked in a normal job, whereas colleagues in the MBA at the time would have been saying, this is not what happens. Managers get promoted to places that they shouldn't get promoted to, and all hell breaks loose. And it's like, why does he not get fired? And they look at me as if I could do it. You're not allowed to fire somebody. And I was like, what do you mean? Explain this to me. Because as a trader, we never got a salary. And once the market says you're done, you're gone, you're cut. Your desk, your chair spinning, and you're out the door. That's all we sort of know. And I suppose it's the same in startups. The one that doesn't get it right, they're gone. So for me, it's just common sense. So, we're all working from lockdown, and, we do a call once a week. And I said, look, you could tell another big lockdown was coming. And there's lots of sorts of craziness happening in Belfast. Just stuff you wouldn't believe, with and bars and nightclubs being open and things. And I was like, we're going to be heading for another lockdown here, and it's going to be winter, and it's going to be dark, and it's going to be miserable. Before that happens, let's all get a catch up and have a good night, because we never see each other. We only talk on Zoom. And heading into Christmas, I said, look, it's going to be miserable. It's going to be dark. You're not going to get out of your house. If you're not feeling up for it, just heads up, say, here, I'll be online later, or we'll be back tomorrow. It's not going to be the end of the world. The world won't end. Just make sure you're minding yourselves. And these are things said in advance. There's no point saying it when somebody is having a difficult time, that you say that, because now they're already anxious. Oh, do I have to check in? Do I have to do that? I don't know. It's just basic communication, I think, and so because we're sort of relaxed that way, and you have good people, like the team is everything. If you have good people, you can trust them to help you out. You know what I mean? Here, don't get me wrong. Today is a perfect day. Speaking to an investor today, and I had to say he tore me apart. Wouldn't be an overstatement. And
Right.
you take a little bit of a hit. You're down a bit. He was writing a lot of things. He just was more down the line, is when he'd be more considered and more thought out. You're knocked down again. You're like, okay, not really in the humor to do stuff, and you just jump on Slack and say, guys, I am offline. I'll be back on later. Ring me if there's something major goes on. You know what I mean? And sort of all in it together. Try and just cement that at the start, and but also be clear. We've had an amazing lady working for us called Rachel Morrow. She's a digital marketing man. She was our first hire, so I hired her before we had any money. She was the first person to actually get anything in the company in terms of a stipend or a salary or something. But you could see, she's just amazing. You have to get her in. But with Rachel, I said, look, you need to know, there's a very strong possibility you could be out of a job within about a year.
Mhm.
Startups fail all the time. And I just want you to know also, it's going to be crazy. And you could be doing stuff that I would need help for at the drop of a hat, that is very mundane and not enjoyable. And there will be other things where you'll be just told, it's your decision, do whatever you want. So, full disclaimer here, if you're in, get an idea, because you've never been in a startup or anything. And so I'm be very clear and honest with the team how much money we have left, when we are due, when our runway ends, what happens when we will have to make a decision, what we can do. And just, I just think if you help the person, whatever it is. So for example, we have a couple of contractors who cannot get hired in full-time employment. They were let go. We don't have enough to, pay a full salary and have them full time. So we're like, is there anybody you need me to introduce you to? Can I help you get a job? If there's anything, if we do get money, great. But if not, look, you should be looking everywhere. And that's not good for Mortgage Propeller, because the team's amazing and some of them are not photographed there. But it's the right thing to do. And if they do, well, all be good. Their auntie knows somebody who runs something that might lead to a connection that will help us, or an introduction. And I'm sure if they did and we needed help and they had a full-time job, I'm sure they would help us on a Saturday and a Sunday. That, I don't know, it just seems normal to me. It just seems simple.
Yeah, you're right. You've never been infected by corporatism, right? And looking back now on my 21-year career in the corporate world, that word corporatism was taught to me by an individual by the name of Greg Chu. Shout out to Greg. And there is a huge amount of politics in a corporation, right?
I can't imagine. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, but I don't know. I remember in the NBA, just sometimes I felt like a black sheep. I'd be looking at going, what?
Oh yeah, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying it takes a different type of person, right? And what I've learned over the last 5 years, Matt, is that there's charismatic leaders out there. And there's charismatic leaders in corporations that do incredibly well. There are charismatic leaders in startups, in scale-ups, in growth stage companies, but they're hard to come by, right? They're not everywhere. And so what you end up with anywhere you go is a real mix of individuals. And sometimes folks look to a person in a leadership role and expect them to be that charismatic leader, but they're not. And that's okay, because that's just who they are, right? But it's kind of, I think we're long past the age of leading and managing by directive, right? That this is about communication. It's about understanding what people want to do, understanding where they want to go. Like you said, letting people know you could be out of a job in a year, right? And having that ability to connect with people is just critically important in trying to get anything done. Anyway, listen, if you're looking ahead, Matt, how does it all come together for you guys with what you're targeting for 2021? Both in life and with Mortgage Propeller, which kind of feel like they're one and the same at this stage, right?
Oh, they are. Especially with lockdown, there is no sort of separation between it. But I can accept this now. I can accept, and Brandon's the same, and Paul's the same. If it doesn't work out, and I read in Founder's Dilemma, that like 100% of the companies 100% of the founders who failed 2 years out before failure believed that it was going to be a big success. And I was like, how can that be? How can you not know that sometimes these things don't work out? All sorts of things can happen. You've got your little risk matrix for the investors, and you go, if that happened, that'd be a bit difficult. But as long as you did everything, if you did absolutely everything that you could, that there was nothing else that you could look back going, maybe I could have done that to make it happen, or maybe this. If that happens, and you did everything, then look, you know what? It didn't work out. There's nothing more you could have done.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is like the hardest that I'm going to go at this year, as hard as we possibly can. And Brendan and Paul, Rachel, and everybody else is going as hard as they can because they believe in it, and we will give it just more than anybody else can imagine. So that's our intention for 2021. We have a few big milestones along the way. We're in the middle of one right now. We just launched. I have deja vu here, Pete. I have an application into the FCA sandbox. It went in. It went in at 4:45 a.m. on the 30th, and bit of back and forth. I'm going to find out any day if we're in. Please God, we are. And that takes us to chasing the next goal, which is to become a network, which needs direct authorization. And hopefully we would be testing with that. That's a big one. Another one is that we're starting to get those early metrics. We're only live a couple of weeks, but we have the ambition to go and take on those big networks, those big authorized firms that are spending 27 million to make 5 million. We think there's a way that we can do it better, but we're going to need some proper investment and proper belief. And so what we're doing right now is we're getting a little extension on the previous investment that we took last year. So that round is technically still over, and we're going to try and raise we are going to raise, be pretty straightforward, about 75 to 100k, and that's going to give us the extension to give us 12 months of runway. Yeah. And that is it. Once we've got that, we are running as fast as we can. And what I'm told, it takes about 6 to 9 months to close a proper seed round. And we are going to raise that money. If all goes well, we will then build out a team and we'll go for it. If we don't raise that money, that big chunk of investment, well, there'll be some sort of a pivot. It'll be another one of let's find a way to do it. But that is what 2021, it's those three things, and one of them mightn't land. Perhaps the FCA sandbox doesn't land right now, which means we'd have to go directly through it or wait to the next application process. Perhaps our metrics take longer, so we might have to hustle some way, cut back, take a bit more pain. The founders take a little bit more pain while we extend our runway to get our metrics. Perhaps from the trying to achieve product market fit, we see that we have to do a little pivot, and there's a little battle going to be over the next 3, 4, 5 months. It's absolutely crucial. And we haven't even mentioned COVID and all the things that can do, but early signs are pretty positive that we're on the right track in some form. But this is, I caught up with everybody after Christmas. I lost a lot of sleep over Christmas just thinking, okay, what should we be doing? And we are not aiming to just be a software company. We are aiming to do this correctly and make life easier for the brokers, make life easier for the borrowers, and do it by being authorized and challenge these guys that have been there since the 80s and not made any difference, And we're not aiming to fall short. We're going for it, and if we get carried out in our shield, well, so be it, as long as we didn't leave anything behind, going for it,
Absolutely. I'm hearing a lot of Brian McNulty in you, who's the founder of Fund Admin Chain, FAC in London, who I'm working with, and saying a lot of the same things, that if this is, an extra 0.001% to find one more potential investor at 3 a.m, well, hell, I'm going to do it.
Yes. Right. That's the man I think I'd like to have a chat with, because that's that just every little bit, you see me write an investor update on Christmas Day. I was like, okay, I could have easily left that to St. Stephen's Day, or maybe the 27th. I was absolutely out on my feet that day, and I was like, you know what, I'll just do this now, because it's just another little thing. It's just another little thing. Lots of little things, and when you take all those little steps that other people maybe wouldn't be willing to do, you're really far ahead. Do you know what I mean? So even when I've had a crappy day, but there's a few hours left in the evening, I can get some stuff done. Do you know what I mean?
You certainly can.
That's the way we go.
I know. I love it. I know all about you saving Mint Cafe Bar from ruins. I know you know all about Bebo, and we've now obviously shared that with the world. But what is one thing that people wouldn't expect to know about Matt McAllister?
Nothing probably of any interest. Let me think here.
We've had so many things shared on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, do you know the CEOs that get up in the morning and they do their workouts 6 a.m. do that the half-hour workout every day, and then probably eat some smoothies and things like that. I am the anti-CEO because I had an issue with sleeping when I was in school. I always slept in for exams. Always. I slept in for an exam with GCSE, cost me a grade. I slept in for one in my A level, cost me a grade. And then when I went to university, I slept in for the first one, which would have cost me the year. And I just made it in. You get a 45-minute window, and I was like, this has to stop. I can't do this anymore. So what I ended up doing was I would work through the night before every exam for the rest of all of university, for all of MBA exams. So what I've got into a habit of doing is I work through the night. So if you were to see me, you'll see the light on. I work right through the night, do kid stuff in the morning if needs be, and so whenever I need to catch up, I just work through the night. I know that is not good, but it allows me to collect lots of extra hours that nobody else can get. All because I just sort of get into the habit of it. When you were down to the wire getting ready for an exam, just stay up and keep working on it. I usually put a movie on in the background, one that you don't have to pay attention to. Like, we're not watching Tenet or Inception. It's usually something stupid like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So I'm just working away, and I might keep an eye on it, but I don't know if that's kind of interesting, but nobody knows that.
You know why it's a good idea to do that as well? Because money never sleeps.
Oh, shite.
You set that one up, pal. Thank you.
Ridiculous. Cream. So you just lost about 50% of your viewing with that. Go on, not listening.
Oh man, you know what? But the power of the editing tool, I can delete whatever I want out of this podcast. So we'll see what sticks, right? Listen, Matt, this has been awesome. So thank you so much for sticking up so late. Just so everyone knows, it's 10:33 p.m. Really appreciate you doing this with us, and best of luck with the round. Best of luck in dealing with investors, and to keep writing those fabulous investor letters that feel like they have a press this button here if you want to hear Matt McAllister read this to you, because I read it with your voice inside my head, right? And, keep building the team, keep talking to customers, just keep pushing, bro. You're going to get there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It. Can watch this space. We'll do one in a year's time. We're like, so what happened, Matt?
Yeah. I hear you. Thanks, pal.
No worries. Cheers. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
That does it for this week, folks, and thanks to Matt for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links and show notes for this episode are on moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online. Also, you can subscribe to our Money Never Sleeps newsletter at moneyneversleeps.substack.com. If you're enjoying Money Never Sleeps and want to see it continue, make sure you hop on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. Also, check us out on podchaser.com to tell us what you think, or leave us a voicemail on our website, moneyneversleeps.ie. And don't forget Conan Brophy from Create Sound. He mixes and edits each episode for us and is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I help startups get their products to market, get customers, and finance their vision. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or at NorioVentures.com, and you can follow Owen Fitzgerald on Twitter at OwenFitzgerald9. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.